among Iranians. Mounting political unrest, economic challenges, and widespread protests against the regime forced the Shah to leave Iran on 16 January 1979. Shortly after this, revolutionary forces led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini took control, ending the monarchy. So that was the end of the monarchy in Iran and establishing the Islamic Republic of Iran. So theocracy started in 1979, and tensions escalated after the 1979 Iranian Revolution, when the Shah was overthrown and the Islamic Republic was established. The US Embassy in Tehran was seized by Iranian students, resulting in the hostage crisis that lasted for 444 days. We still remember this in history. Since then, relations have remained strained between the two countries, influenced by issues such as regional power struggles, nuclear ambitions, and differing ideological perspectives. Now, I come to the Gulf states because some of my students were asking, why the attacks on the Gulf states. The Gulf states permit the U.S. military presence for several strategic reasons, or in other words, you have U.S. military assets, across the Gulf states. First, they seek security guarantees against regional threats, especially from Iran, whose military capabilities and political ambitions have historically caused concern among Gulf nations. The U.S. presence acts as a deterrent against potential aggression and offers rapid response capability in case of conflict. Additionally, the U.S. military bases bolster the Gulf states' relationship with Western powers, providing access to advanced technology, intelligence sharing, and economic benefits. While this presence can make Gulf states targets for Iranian hostility, their governments view alliance with the U.S. as essential for maintaining stability and protecting their sovereignty in a volatile region. Now, I come back now to the issue of identity, which I said is very prominent in the title sent to me. Now, the identity issues, when you look at the history of the conflict as I have provided, you will see a number of identity issues. And I isolated about 5 here before coming back to the issue of religious identity. So the conflict, given the history that I provided, involves Iran, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and USA. And so when you put all of them together, you are now having a complex conflict that will produce different types of results. Now, the identity conflicts one could see in this crisis, the first one is religious identity. And here we're saying the rivalry between the Shia majority Iran and Sunni majority. And this fuels conflict in some cases. But I maintain my position that it is actually not the sectarian differences that actually are responsible for these problems. It is not religion that is causing it, but geopolitics. The second identity issue I identified in this presentation is national identity and sovereignty. Iran often positions itself as an independent power resisting Western influence, particularly that of USA and its ally, Israel. Conversely, Israel and Saudi Arabia perceive Iran's regional ambitions as threats to their own security and sovereignty. The third identity that I identified here, ethnic and cultural identity. Iran's Persian heritage contrasts with that of Arab identity of Saudi Arabia and many other regional states. This ethnic divide adds another layer to the rivalry as both countries seek cultural and political leadership in the region. The fourth identity crisis I call political ideology. The Islamic Republic of Iran promotes a revolutionary anti-Western ideology, while the US and its allies advocate for liberal democracy, of monarchy, further polarizing the parties involved. Now, in my own simple analysis, what America is trying to do is to force Iran to behave accordingly. And when I say accordingly here, we are saying that the US will position itself as the policeman of the world and will want Iran to actually do or undo a number of things. So the fifth identity issue I call attention to, perception of legitimacy. Here we are dealing with globalization, reglobalization, and deglobalization. Israel's legitimacy as a state is rejected by Iran, which supports groups opposing Israel's existence. This identity-based rejection sustains ongoing hostilities and shapes foreign policy in the region. Now, these identity issues, religious, national, ethnic, ideological, and questions of legitimacy, intersect, and amplify tensions, making the conflict complex and deeply rooted in historical narratives and perception. Now, so I now ask myself, what are the religious issues? So I am isolating religious identity now. And I'm saying, what are the first is the Shia and Sunni religious divide between Iran and Saudi Arabia. The second, in my own assessment, is the 1979 Iranian Revolution, not really on the account of Iran becoming a theocracy, but Ayatollah asking Muslims to export revolution to the other parts of the world. Saudi Arabia has historically viewed the notion of exporting the Iranian revolution with deep suspicion and apprehension. The idea is perceived by Saudi Arabia leadership as a direct challenge to its own political and religious authority in the region. Riyadh sees this exportation as a potential threat to regional stability, fearing it could inspire political unrest and empower groups aligned with Iran's revolutionary ideals, especially within the Shia populations in the Gulf. So this perception has contributed to long-standing rivalry and tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran, with both countries vying for influence across the Middle East. The third one, in my consideration, is demonization of the US and Israel as the great Satan and little Satan, respectively, by Iran. You know, as a result of the 1979 revolution, the US was tagged as the great Satan and Israel tagged little Satan. And what the Iranians want to see is a situation where these two Satans are eliminated. And we have groups across the globe that are actually working in these directions. Now, the last one is the Hezbollah and Hamas, which are supported by Iran. Both of them have religious foundations. Hezbollah is a Shia Islamic political and military group based in Lebanon, while Hamas is a Sunni Islamic movement operating primarily in the Palestinian territory. And of course, you are familiar with the conflict between these people and Israel and how America comes in from time to time to provide some support. Now, we come to Nigeria. We realize that in Nigeria, whenever there is a problem in the Middle East, there is always an aftermath in Nigeria. Protests are staged, and in some cases, people get killed in the process of the conflict. But I am particularly not focusing on these general implications of Middle East crisis in Nigeria. I want to focus particularly on the role of the Islamic movement of Nigeria, which is led by Zaki. I have been studying this group since the 1990s. I've published extensively on them since this group broke off from MSS, the Muslim Students Society, And then Zaki led that group that engaged in different problems in Kano, Katsina, Kaduna. So I've written extensively on this. But the point I'm trying to make here is that Zaki actually tried to step down, bring the Iranian Revolution to Nigeria. When I wrote my initial papers on this group and we interviewed them in the north, they claim not to be party, they claim not to have any relationship with Iran. But now they openly identify with Iran. So now when you are looking at religious solidarity protest, you want to first probably call attention to the protest staged by the Islamic movement of Nigeria. There were a number of other Muslims that staged a protest, but their own protest was not in tandem with that of the Nigerian Shiites. They were actually protesting the bad treatment of Muslims in Iran, and a number of Yoruba clerics also participated in this protest. Since this crisis started, I've been studying it. Not only I've been looking also at the digital dimension of the conflicts. So we've been having Islamic clerics, some supporting and some opposing. And in fact, one Islamic cleric asked, are Iranians Muslims? Because one Islamic priest said, we want to protect Islam, and that the head of Islam was killed. So another person asked, is Khomeini the head of Muslims? That if Muslims are looking for leadership, they would rather turn in the direction of Saudi Arabia, not in the. So the debate there online is very, very rich. It's very rich. And in fact, one Yoruba cleric, Islamic cleric, was actually mobilizing people to say, look, let us all go to Iran to go and fight religious war. And then another priest cleric told him, go alone, because if we are going to fight religious war, it will not be in Tehran that we'll be going to. So the point we're trying to make here is that, yes, we have a bit of this religious solidarity protest in Nigeria, but we have to underscore the point that Nigeria has a large population of Sunni Muslims. And I don't think the Shiites are as many as so some of them participated in these discussions more around the issues of human rights, around the issue of humanitarianism, and and we, across the globe, we also have protests. But many of these global protests, we're actually dealing with the issue of globalization. Is it right for one country to be forcing another to behave in a manner that is outside the rules-based global system that we run? Can America actually successfully become the policeman of the world and be successful in it? Now, I close this presentation by looking at implications of all these problems on our Nigerian landscape. The first to be considered is what I called strategic stability. Religious solidarity protests in Nigeria, particularly those associated with this ongoing conflict, have the potential to exacerbate existing religious and ethnic tension in the country. You need to go to the social media to see the kind of tension that we have there online. This is easily observable in how Nigerians react to the situations. Nigeria is known for its delicate balance between Muslims and Christians. The relationship between the Shia and Sunni in the country is also conflict-ridden in some cases. External conflicts can sometimes amplify these local divisions, most especially during solidarity protests. So if those solidarity protests become confrontational or politicized, they may challenge the government's ability to maintain social cohesion and strategic stability. The second aspect I looked at is the security cases. Large-scale protests, especially those driven by religious fervor, can pose significant risk to public order and security. There is a possibility that extreme groups may exploit these gatherings to further their agenda, potentially leading to violence or clashes, you know. But I noticed that all the protests that were staged recently were peaceful. And then the economic outlook, the disruptions caused by protests, including roadblocks and temporary business, can have.
I think back then you
Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me?
Ponza, can
Yes,
you
yes,
hear you?
but somebody else is
Ponza, can you mute your mic? Ponza, can you mute your mic?
So, what we're saying is that this problem has economic impact on us, and we can feel it. And we noticed recently that the American embassies are shut down operations, and this is affecting us, and we affect us massively. But as I close, I want to say that if I'm closing with the protest as this title, I want to say Nigerians have the right to stage protest. It is their constitutional right. And when these people are staging their protest, it is not our right to dictate what they can stage protest around or what they cannot stage protest around. So if Nigeria decided to stage protest because of what is going on in the Middle East, well, they have the right to do it. The only thing that could be said is that when you are staging protest, you must know that where your own rights stop is where that of some other people starts. So we must ensure that our protest does not actually in any way endanger the rest of the society. Now, I am saying that there are bigger issues for us to stage protests around. We should not just limit ourselves to staging protests around what is going on in stage religious protests. There are other issues for us to stage protests around on this issue, on this problem from the Middle East. The first one is the need for us to return to rules-based global multilateralism. What we're witnessing from America and Israel today is what personally I would call unilateralism. You know, one country believing that you can actually be the policeman of the world. You know, America did this in March 2003 when it went into Iraq and with the belief that Saddam had nuclear weapons and that country was brought down. You know, so we think that the world cannot continue like this. A situation where one country will arrogate to itself the power to dictate how other countries, behave or manage themselves. Look at Venezuela, and then look at the threats coming from America to deal with this country and deal with that country. I think it's a matter that the rest of us should try to stage protest going has legal and illegal aspects. Well, for Iran, America used sanctions, international sanctions. Well, to an extent, you can say this is right. And then again, America tried to instigate regime change, and this has not worked. And then this recent strategy of leadership decapitation, kill all the leaders. And as you kill one, new leaders come up and you eliminate the leader. In security studies, it's called leadership decapitation. But it is something that I think the rest of the world should reject. And the most recent approach that America is adopting now is to ask Iran to surrender. And we're saying here that no country will willingly surrender its sovereignty to a foreign country.
Can no longer hear you, sir.
Okay, what I'm saying is that the letters approach that America seems to be adopting now is to say, okay, Iran should surrender. And we are saying America could win the war. But if Iran is forced to be what it does not want to be, what we end up is that they will export terrorism to more parts of the world. So you have proxy attacks, American interests being targeted in other parts of the world. So what we're therefore saying is that the approach is being adopted by America may not make the global community to be peaceful. And therefore, probably we need to develop our own strategies for staging protests against it. The unilateralism that we're witnessing now around this nuclear weapon thing cannot be arrogated. A country cannot arrogate it to itself. There is a global body called International Atomic Energy Agency that is saddled with the responsibility for managing this problem. And then you also have other, UN agencies, UN Security Council that are supposed to be dealing with this problem. So the question is, how do we return to a global community that is rules-based? For now, I don't think that is what we have. And it is something that the rest of the world must protest against. The second one is escalation of conflict and risk of regional instability. The ongoing crisis between Iran and Israel, US, threatens to destabilize the Middle East the more. And this may have global repercussions, include increased insecurity and economic challenges. Third one, impact on global oil prices. We are already feeling it. You are already feeling it. So let me know, educate you about the problem you are going through. Then you have humanitarian concerns. Look at the number of people that have been killed since this crisis started. A secondary school for girls was nearly wiped out as a result of this crisis. So we need people to stage protest against the humanitarian cost of this conflict. And then international diplomacy and sovereignty, I think, is in question. There's a need for us to begin to say, how do we protect ourselves as weaker nation? Because it's happening to Iran today. It could happen to us also tomorrow. Now, by saying this, I'm not canonizing Iran, and I'm not an advocate of whatever Iran is doing. I condemn Iran supporting Hezbollah, supporting Hamas, but I am saying that there's the need for us to respect sovereignty as we're dealing with all these problems. And then I see a rise in religious and ethnic tensions around the world as a result of this crisis. And the last point I will make is that Nigerians should not allow themselves to be deceived by what is going on. We have many problems in the country. So, to me, if we are not careful, the crisis in Iran will divert our attention from core domestic issues. Global crisis may divert attention and resources from pressing Nigerian challenges, such as unemployment, insecurity, poverty, election security, all of which stare us in the face at this moment. Nigerians should and can demand that leaders prioritize national interest and be more altruistic as we deal with other people's problems. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Prof. I don't know how we can clap for you on the platform like this, but it's always delight listening to you, always thrilling and fulfilling. Trying to manage time. This program is supposed to be for 2 hours, and I know all our resource persons will be very difficult to stop because they are full of wisdom, and we all want to learn from their wealth of experience. I know there are some questions that you may have. I will encourage that you write them down if you don't want to forget. We're going to take all the questions together after the last speaker. Prof has raised a lot of issues, and I think profoundly is setting the context for all the resource persons to build on in terms of the historicization of the conflict between Iran and the West generally, and clear roles context of engagement, and lastly, implication for Nigeria and the religious solidarity that I also mentioned. We thank you for some of your recommendations and conclusions. We will put that together, and we will also be able to share Prof's paper to all the participants at the end of the program. So if you permit me, Prof, we will take questions for your session at the end of the whole session.
Please, let me observe that I don't have any paper. I just have points that I jotted down.
Oh, okay. So that's fine. Thanks for making that clear. At least everybody knows. So if I can, Admiral, I want to invite you last because you're going to be talking about the policy part of this issue. So if I can invite Professor Anthony Killer to make his presentation. Professor. Professor Killer.
I'm here. Can you hear me though? I'm speaking.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good morning.
You have the floor, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues, policymakers, scholars and analysts, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to commence by adding my thanks to the organizers for this event for giving us the opportunity to explore these very important themes and in a very serious circle, and to thank the speaker before me for laying that very important foundation. I am delighted and honored to speak here today because, as I said, it is good to approach policy with seriousness. And when we get forums where it can be approached with seriousness, it gives one the light to be able to explore and learn. My theme is economics, so we have to dissect economic with rigor and recognize that I hope by the end of the day, we're able to recognize that a nation's prosperity depends not on only the resources we have, but on the wisdom guiding how we use those resources. This is a moment to reflect on the profound responsibility we bear in shaping the future rooted in what I call informed and decisive actions. The topic we're asked to address today, the economic and energy security dimension of oil windfalls, inflation risk, and Nigeria's fiscal vulnerability. You can imagine my trouble that the first challenge I had to overcome was to be able to read the whole thing. Quite a very long and pregnant title to deal with. I wish the other speakers the very best. I know they're sympathizing and solidarizing with me because they've probably gone through the same. The topic, however, is neither abstract nor distant from us. It's not far off. It is a very urgent, tangible, and critical, and I think impactful topic that is shaping our present and will shape our future as a country and indeed as a continent. For many decades, oil has been the cornerstone of Nigeria's economic narrative. This narrative has been a twin, a genus-faced narrative because it comes with blessing and it also comes with its curses. It has served as both a boon and a trap for us. It has tempted prosperity and yet it has risked dependency. Whenever global oil prices surge unexpectedly, Nigeria as a country and as a system, as an economy, encounters what in economics we call a windfall, i.e., an abrupt inflow of revenue that is driven not by improved efficiency, and this is very important, but by shifts in international market dynamics. So all of a sudden we get paid, not because we're doing anything better, but because something is going on in the world, which in many cases we have not contributed to. This moment serve as potential opportunities. We must agree to that. But I argue that they also deceive us with some kind of illusions. And this illusion leads us to a very fascinating paradox surrounding oil wells that I believe we need to reflect upon again and again. The paradox for us as Nigerians is a truth that we're familiar with and we well understood. We've understood it, over the years because we've experienced it as scholars and citizens and consumers. Nigeria undoubtedly starts as a major player in the global oil industry. We're right in the middle of it. Yet, as a country, we face ongoing economic turbulence. We wake up to, we deal with repeated episodes of fiscal strain, currency fluctuations, inflationary pressures that underscores the volatile nature of our financial landscape. This turbulence challenge our stability and resilience, first as an economy, but then also as a nation. And governments of the day understand this pressure more than other people. But it affects not just our economic system, but the fabric as a nation as well. Because as you know, it is easier to get on well when there's a boon and the going is good. It becomes more difficult when things are tough. That is when scrutiny increases, competition rears its head, and the first people to suffer is government of the day. It's either they do brilliantly well, or they resort to rigging elections if they cannot win due to bad economy. That is the reality of it. We need to be clear about this. This paradox and the illusion is not exclusive to Nigerians. We live it, and we mention that because we know it, but it's something that can happen and happens in a lot of countries. Economics call the paradox the resource curse or resource paradox. It's a situation in which nations, though abundant with natural resources, find it difficult to convert those resources into widespread prosperity. Prosperity is clear, but please hold on to the prefix I use for prosperity, which is a widespread prosperity. The prosperity of oil is in Nigeria, as you can see from the amount of people who have private jets. But it is not widespread from the amount of people who the best they have gotten can get from oil is subsidies. Outside that, they struggle with infrastructure and every other thing. Now, despite these wealth and resources, this country, like Nigeria, grapple with underdevelopment, inequality, and this highlights more than anything the striking disconnect between resource wealth and economic well-being. So, in a way, this is a situation where the church or the mosque is rich, but the members are poor. Perhaps the cleric might be rich as well, but the members are poor. The paradox emerges because revenue from natural oil resources behave distinctively and differently from conventional economic income. This, I refer to the fundamental divergence in financial dynamics. Natural resources by nature are volatile, i.e., revenues that come from natural resources by nature are volatile. They're subject to external forces which are unpredictable, e.g., I don't know, we call it war. Allow me to call it attack on Iran. The situation in Iran, the situation again, Ukraine, before that. The external forces that can trigger sudden surges. Their unpredictable nature, unless you are part of the people that plan the attack or plan the war, then you are not like most of us. Most of us do not know they're coming, or at least until very close to it. This unpredictable nature demands a strategic resilience and keen oversight, which I think I'm not saying, I'm not revealing anything new if I argue it is not present in the way we manage our governance in general and our wealth, our oil in particular. The volatility means, therefore, that oil revenues are more like the revenue of a lottery winner than somebody who's earning a salary. As many of us will understand, societies that view windfall as permanent income are likely to encounter difficulties when the windfall ends. Please allow me to indulge me to dwell on the mechanism behind the illusion of windfalls. When the prices of oil goes up, government and indeed the people, but led by government, very important, please, this distinction. Government all of a sudden start to perceive their countries as richer than they really are. This perception prompts them to enlarge budgets, and this escalates spending. As they do this, the first consequence is that political expectations intensify, and this will then start to fuel a cycle of anticipation and action. Yet, in most cases, as you know, as history teaches us, but as logic will make us understand, this kind of increase is often temporary. No, the war is not going to last forever. You know, there are temporary disruptions. Actually, we don't call them disruptions, but they ought to be seen as disruptions, or, you know, sudden spikes. Because global oil prices are shaped by geopolitical tension, supply disruptions, market speculations, they rise quickly, and guess what? They also fall quickly. The volatility, therefore, makes oil revenue a very dangerous foundation for fiscal planning of a collective, in this case, of a nation. If a government designs long-term expenditures, such as public wages, infrastructural commitments, subsidies, investment in education, planning of health, if we decide all this kind of thing based on, indeed, our borrowing, I must add, if we decide all these things based on oil windfalls, then there's a risk of creating a structural imbalance in our public finances. And very sadly for us, you know, if I was talking to a group of people from Norway, they would struggle to understand what I'm saying. But sadly for us, as Nigerians, it is very easy to understand what we're talking about here. Very sad, but true. When prices eventually fall, the commitments we make, or we made now, when they were good, remains. But the revenue that we're counting on, those ones disappear because the prices have gone down. The result, therefore, is a fiscal stress, which sadly for us, Nigeria has experienced such cycle more than once. The oil markets today are shaped by a rather complex mixture of geopolitics, technological change, and energy transition. Energy transition and technological change refer to the move people are making from the normal route of energy that we know to the different ones, from solar energy to electricity to windmill, and moving away, really, in a way, our own diamond is being called by other people dirty energy. I think it's important to take note of that. But also, more immediately, the one we can feel straight away is by geopolitics. Ukraine, Iran are the living examples of that. The conflicts in energy-producing region can drive the prices up or down, depending on where you start. Most cases up because it limits the demand. At the same time, technology development shape productions because, as I said, they're moving to renewable energy, and again, they can move down the demand for us or for our product, not for us actually, it's our product that is being demanded. For oil producing countries like Nigeria, this transition presents a very deep strategic question, which at some point we need to face. In a nutshell, the question is, how should we manage hydrocarbon wealth when global economy is preparing for a post-hydrocarbon future? The other question is, how do we manage a wealth that is not stable, juxtaposed to commitment and expenditures that are stable? So look at this way. Geopolitics makes oil revenue unstable. Technology makes it diminishing. It decreases it. In the meantime, our expenditure are stable, and if anything, they are increasing. If you put that in the matrix, what you see is that our movement is upwards and stable. Revenues that sustain our movement is volatile and reducing. The answer cannot simply be to produce and spend much oil revenue as possible while the opportunity lasts. The challenge and the answer is to convert our temporary resources, our temporary wealth, into permanent economic capacity. Luckily for us, we have had ministers and government who have mounted diversity and move away from oil dependency. I think we just need to learn to do it. Another critical dimension, since we've been asked to talk about dimensions of the oil windfall, is inflation. When government receives large oil revenues and translate them into rapid increases in spending, the economy logically, some people say naturally, but let's just say logically, the economy will logically experience demand-driven inflation. The money is there, we've pumped it because we received money, and we're throwing money out there to do that. And here we go back to that strategic management of our resources for permanent economic capacity. We get money from oil, then we throw it out there, we spend it. Money circulates in the economy, but our productive capacity does not expand at the same time. In other words, we are producing the same amount or less, but we have more money to buy more, or we're buying more anyway. Because we've expanded expenditure without expanding capacity for production, what follows is increase in price, because there's more money to buy the same thing. We don't produce it, we import it. What follows is increase in imports. What follows is increase, or at least fluctuations in our exchange rates, because we're using our money to chase more imported things. This weakens our local currency, and the dynamics have been very visible in all oil-dependent economies. Not just Nigeria, but sadly for us, Nigeria makes a case very clearly. The danger in this is that inflation erodes the purchasing power and undermines the very prosperity that oil revenues are expected to create. So, paradoxically, the oil wealth can sometimes produce more discomfort rather than stability, because it has given us the illusion of being rich, and it has actually made some people rich. And those who are rich will spend, and the rest of us are not producing, so everything goes up. And I really want us to look, Lagosians will understand it better. I think people in Abuja as well. I don't know very much about the rest of the country, but I think, as my late papa would say, don't worry, bad things spread. when I studied with the old man, he was an economist. He would tell me, don't worry about that data. You see, notice that bad things tend to be the same across board. We also notice that from real estate to a lot of other things, prices of houses are going up in a way that cannot be explained from the cost of production and amenities around the area. They defy everything that we've been taught in real estate management about how to price houses, because the inflation that we have is driven by uneven prosperity, unstable income, and the illusion of wealth, the illusion of richness. Nigeria's fiscal vulnerability arises from, I think, 3 or 4 structural realities. But let's look at the main 3. Number 1, government revenues remain heavily dependent on oil exports. Number 2, public expenditures commitments often grow during high oil prices. Number 3, our non-oil economy, although large and dynamic, does not yet generate sufficient tax revenue to stabilize our public finances. As a matter of fact, I say that because that is an easier equation to make. But a better equation to look at is the size of the non-oil economy, its influence in the society, and its place in our reforms, priorities, budgeting, and policies. The fourth thing, of course, which is the key to everything, is leadership and wealth management. Individuals are doing well in managing their wealth. They diverse, they invest abroad, they invest in various kinds of things. But the management of the Commonwealth, the management of the Nigerian wealth, allow me to say, leaves a lot to be desired. This combination of bad management, position of non-oil economy, the growth of public expenditure commitments juxtaposed to the dependency on government revenues on oil exports. This combination creates a very fragile fiscal architecture. And we move up and down like a yo-yo. When oil prices go up, optimism returns. When they fall, the structural weakness becomes very visible. In other words, Nigeria's physical system behaves like a structure whose foundation expand and contract with global economic, global commodity markets. Ultimately, the management of oil wealth is not merely an economic issue. It's a government issue, governance, politics, call it whatever you may, but it's a governance issue. Countries that have managed resources successfully, such as Norway, which I mentioned before, have done so not because they possess oil, but because they developed, not even possessed, they develop institutions capable of managing their oil responsibly. Some of you will be familiar with my paper about Norway called Oil That Did Not Get Into People's Head. In a way, the conversation we're having today, part of it comes from that paper that was written a few years ago, before this meeting was convened, 5 years ago, where we looked at the fact that Nigeria's oil got into our head, got us drunk. But that of Norway did not make them drunk. They remained sober in everything they did. The institutions that the Norwegians built imposed discipline on government. They saved a portion of the resources they generated. They invested strategically. They protected future generations from the wealth illusion, from the instability, from the external factor-driven affairs. And as a matter of fact, we must say immediately now that the institution is called the sovereign oil wealth, and what Norway has generated from that wealth fund is actually more than they generate now from the oil itself. And you see, if you notice, we've not talked about refining at all. We're just talking about how to manage it. When we go into that, that is when we now look at a situation where we learn to move away from selling just yam, but selling pounded yam, as it were. Nigeria, luckily for us, possesses enormous intellectual capacity, entrepreneurial energy, policy expertise. I look at the people in this room. What we then need, what remains essential, is our ability to fortify institutions that will ensure that resource revenues are used strategically rather than politically. Very crucial, this distinction. As a country, we need to make some strategic choices. If we want to transform oil windfalls into long-term prosperity, then several strategic choices become necessary. Number one is our oil revenue must be treated as temporary capital, not capital income. No, not permanent income, rather. We must look at it as temporary capital. Another thing we need to start looking at straight away is that a larger portion of our windfall revenue should be directed into sovereign savings and used for stabilization mechanism than spending them because we have them now. A third point is that investment must focus on sectors capable of generating sustainable growth. These sectors are not very difficult sectors to find. We just have to focus on them. I will give you 4 or 5, and I advise you to find some more yourself. One is infrastructure, another is human capital, another is technology, and another that people are not talking about is industrial development. In my Lagos, industrial areas have been turned to churches. And we need to reverse these policies, otherwise we're not serious. There's been no serious industrial development policy for the past, 20 years, even not 60 years. It's time we look at that. We need to train people who can invent, who can innovate. We need to start talking about patent development. We have too many people in this country who are rich, and we do not even know what they produce precisely. Let us start identifying and celebrating only creators of wealth and job, innovators and inventors. Of course, we need to train them. Then we need to understand that technology is the way out of poverty and the way to prosperity and peace and security and stability. Technology is the new oracle of the world, is the new grail. So we must invest in it. Another crucial factor is our fiscal policy, which must reduce the vulnerability that is created by the excessive dependence on oil revenue. We must be able to come up with a fiscal policy that is geared towards stability. All this means that we as a country, Nigeria, must think of transforming a cliche it has become now, from being an oil-dependent economy to being a productive economy that happens to produce oil, just casually. Let us be known for our art and our technology. Let us be known for our innovation. Let us be known for our patent. Let us be known for our research. Let us be known for our museums, our writings, our vocational creation. Let us produce mobile phones that we use so much of. Let us produce wristwatch. And let it be said that, oh, they also have oil. We need a thinking that can change the dynamics to go that way. Nigeria's experience is not a unique or isolated one. Many African countries face similar dilemmas. when managing natural wealth. That is what happened to them. But I hamper Nigeria because, when it's close to home, you feel the pain more. The barrier, the challenge for African policymakers is therefore a collective one. How do we ensure that natural resources become foundation for transformation rather than a source of volatility? As policymakers, analysts, intellectuals, and observers, we need to imagine Africa's future prosperity as a prosperity that will not depend solely on commodity, but we need to ensure that that volatility, that prosperity depends on knowledge, on innovation, on governance, on economic diversification, and on stability that comes from the way we manage our economy, but also come from the way we manage our security. Interestingly for us, this same oil can finance this transition. But sadly for us, it cannot substitute it. So we must use it to fund the transition. Allow me to say, therefore, that we must move from windfall to wisdom. Oil windfalls are moments of temptation. They invite government to believe that prosperity has arrived effortlessly. Yet history shows us that prosperity built on temporary resources or sudden surges rarely last. The true test of leadership lies in how we, the people, entities, and government spend our windfall, but it lies in how wisely we manage them. If we use it to build and just spend, it won't go far. The oil wealth of Nigeria is rich, but the future prosperity of Nigeria will depend less on the price of oil and more on the quality of the decision taken about that oil. If those decisions prioritize discipline, diversification, and institutional interest, Nigeria's resources wealth can become a platform of long-term economic stability. If not, the cycle of windfall and vulnerability will continue. The choice, as always, is in policy. It lies not in the resources we possess, but in the wisdom with which we use them. As Iran becomes the capital of the world for these skills we're facing, my argument is that what we need to think about is a situation that isolates us from the tough towards stability. And it's not desired. You can't go there at all. In all these things, and I stop here very soon, although I've not gotten a sign, but I think I should. In all these things, one thing we have to think about is that example of producing yam and selling just yam. And then I said we should be buying pounded yam. But in reality, in the meantime, we produce yam and buy pounded yam. So when we earn $100, we tend to buy for $200 or at least $1,500, which is a problem. So the way to think about it is that whatever we get from disruptions in the world should be built to building our future, to moving from windfall to wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for looking at this issue from as an economist, from an economy point of view. Your submission is filled with a lot of ideas for even the government to look at, especially the transition using oil to transit into, patents for development, things that can help us not to focus on just one side area of for our economic development. And this is going to help also in the future if perhaps the problem we are having with the current conflicts in the Middle East and with Israel and also the US, if it's going to cause a global problem, we know that it won't disturb our economy and also the flow of the things we want to do nationally. Thank you for some of your recommendations. I can't list all of them, but I will just do that when I'm summarizing before question and answer. It's always a delight listening to you. I know I've been doing that for more than 10 years and it's always fulfilling. Thank you, sir. I think we should move on to our next resource person. I'm hoping that we can finish by 12 because I know a lot of us on this platform have a lot of things to do and it's Friday. Some of our colleagues also need to go for prayers. So if I can invite Rear Admiral Y.E.M. Musa, the former National Coordinator of the National Counterterrorism Center and a retired Rear Admiral of the Nigerian Navy, to give us his own presentation. Admiral, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, the moderator for today. I want to thank you for inviting me for this forum. I hope everyone can hear me. Just confirm that, please.
We can hear you, sir.
Okay, very good. The topic I'm asked to speak on is very
We can't hear you.
Very direct.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Perspective on. Okay, thank you so much. Mine is to speak on the external conflict spillover effect on Nigeria with regard to security. I've taken the topic to say just narrow it down to, but in this case, I will narrow myself to the spillover effect of the crisis. In today's interconnected security environment, like other speakers have already recognized, regional conflict increasingly generates global ripple effect that extend beyond our nations. So the long-standing rivalry between the United States, Israel, and Iran has evolved from a protracted shadow war into what I call an over military confrontation. The June 2025 escalation, followed by the renewed hostility between February and March this year, marked a decisive shift in intensity, including coordinated US-Israeli air and missile operation targeting Iran's strategic military infrastructure, even leading to the command change leadership. In response, Iran conducted retaliatory strikes across the Gulf region, including attacks for infrastructure and the U.S. military assets. Added balance of power and balance of threat, which help to explain the competitive rivalry and mutual threat perception that is shaping the confrontation. But however, in practice, I consider the current confrontation appears less about the redistribution of power, but more about mutual threat perception and deterrence on both sides. While strategic objective of the US and Israel seek to degrade Iran nuclear and ballistic capability, that's what we are told from the initial conflict. Iran aimed to reassert deterrence by targeting regional interests and raising the cost of sustained confrontation. The focus of this paper is potential external implications, especially as have to do with our own country. Although geographically distant from the Middle East theater, Nigeria cannot regard this crisis as entirely remote. Contemporary conflict increasingly generates secondary and indirect security effects that transcend geographical boundaries. For Nigeria, these implications are unlikely to be primarily military. Rather, they are more likely to manifest through psychological.
Admiral, sir, we're having problem with your internet connection. Can you check your internet connection? We can't hear you. Okay, distinguished panelists and audience, I'm trying to connect with the Admiral, so I know what's happening with his connection. Please just bear with us. I'll get back to you in about a minute. Okay, I've just called him on the phone, so he's going to try again in a minute. If it doesn't work, we'll go straight into the interactive session so we can close on time. Can you all hear me?
I
Hello?
can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear
okay,
you.
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Please just give us like a minute. Let him try and reconnect his internet. Admiral sir, can you try now? I think we'll go straight into the interactive session. Not connecting, so he's really having trouble connecting. I will share a slide. He has sent his slide to me, so I'll share it with you, and we hope next time there will be a better connection. So if you have any question regarding Professor Albert and Professor Killer's lecture, please can you indicate by raising up your hand, or the floor is open for questions, comments, and also if you have anything to add to some of the presentations made by the facilitators. The floor is open now. Let me just confirm that our resource person is still with us. Is Professor Albert still with us? Prof.
I'm still here.
Okay, Professor Killer. Prof, are you still with us, Professor Killer? Okay, I can see him online. Maybe just step out. Please, any engagement for Professor Albert? I have some questions here that have been sent that I can use to start the engagement, Prof.
Yes, I am. You can hear me now.
Okay.
I can tell you.
Okay, so this is to Professor Albert. I will just indicate the one that is to Professor Killer. The question I have here is, I mean, this is probably looking at the end from the beginning. Well, in your own experience, in dealing with some of this, in addressing some of this issue, what would be the acceptable end to this war or conflict? What threats does Iran pose to the USA homeland? Is the USA accomplishing its goals in the war? So that would be, is US accomplishing its goals in the war? Is Israel also accomplishing its goals in the war? And this question is for Professor Albert. I think we'll take that and then we'll take the one for Professor Killer. So, Prof, over to you, sir.
Okay. The first question has to do with what you consider to be my own experience,
Yes.
the end to this war. Well, I don't see any quick end to this war other than for us to restore the rules-based global order. One, to let Iran know that it cannot continue to fund terrorism, because it has been clearly established that apart from funding terrorist organizations across the globe, that Tehran is heavily funding Hamas and Hezbollah. So there are issues. But on the other hand, we also need to let the US know that this unilateral approach to preventing Iran from having nuclear weapon will not end. So I think my simple suggestion is for the United Nations to rekit itself, to retool itself, to be able to come in to stop the war, because it is only the United Nations that can play that role now. Russia, China are behind Iran, and a few other powers are behind. They are behind Israel and the US. We are happy that the United Kingdom and Canada have decided not to participate on the side of America, as we saw in the past. So, to me, I don't think the US and Israel can win this war. They may win the war in terms of suppressing Iran for now, but they may not be able to win the peace. I see more problems coming to America and Israel as a result of this problem. So what one would expect is probably for us to follow the trajectory of negotiation that America is talking about. America is saying, let us negotiate. But when you listen to the political rhetoric coming from Washington, it's like America does not want Iran to negotiate from position of strength. The minimum that America would accept is for Iran to drop its nuclear power. And I really don't see Iran actually doing this. So, to me, what we have before us is what in security studies we will call a focal environment. A focal environment is an environment that is volatile for V, that is uncertain for U, that is complex for C, and that is ambiguous for A. It is difficult for anybody to say this is the future of this conflict because, as we're told in the study of terrorism, surprise element is consequential, and I see all of them coming up with surprise elements, most especially Iran, because I don't think America expected Iran to be this powerful in the game. So the Iranians are still having some strength, which actually challenge the hegemony of the US. And so it's difficult for me. I think this is the simple answer I'm providing. It's difficult for me to say this is the end to this war. The second one is, what threats does Iran pose to the US homeland? Iran may not directly pose any serious threat to the US homeland, but I see the US assets globally facing increasing threats. And US assets could also include the assets of the US in Nigeria, the assets of the US in the maritime space, the assets of US in the Middle East. So I see all kinds of proxy attacks. I mean, with this war, Iran did not actually hide its intentions. It hit a number of Gulf states. And Iran is still saying it, that so long as you keep military assets of the US, we will come after you. So I see this actually escalating recently, in the months and years to come. America, Iran is not going to forgive the leadership decapitation strategies used recently. So it is most likely to take it off some other countries outside the homeland of America. Israeli, US attaining their goals in the war. Well, when you start a war, you start with some strategic objectives. What do you want to achieve? But I think the one that we can put our thumb on at this moment is to say that the main intention of America and Israeli is to ensure that there is no country in the Middle East that is having nuclear weapon. And America and Israel believe that Iran is having those assets. And so when this war started, I think what America wanted to do, what the Israelis wanted to do, was to erase those assets. To what extent that has been done is difficult for us to say, because when you look at the configuration of the war, the way the war is fought, it is clear that the Iranians have distributed their nuclear arsenals in different places. So America and Israel might have hit some targets. I sincerely believe that some targets are intact. So probably we'll say that America has not succeeded in achieving that goal. But America, I think, is also, by talking about regime change or negotiation, America and Israel, I think they believe that if they have a friendly government in Tehran, as they tried to do in 1953, that government might dispense with nuclear weaponry, and then so that target, that objective of Iran not having nuclear weapon probably will be achieved through regime change. I don't think that is working. And also we have discovered that leadership decapitation is not working. As you remove one leader, another one is appointed. So hope I've answered the questions to the best of my ability. It's difficult for me to give you an answer here that is perfect, because it's an unfolding war situation.
Certainly. Thank you, Prof, for the way you've answered the question. These are general questions that people have submitted to us that we needed an expert response, and that has been well done. It also helps our reports just to for suggestions to policymakers to look at. Yes, obviously, it's difficult to know the end from the beginning. We can only speculate, and probably our speculation can also help the parties to know exactly what to do. Part of the other, some of the other questions that have been sent to us, which I can now direct to Professor Killer, is what is the economic impact on the world? What is the economic impact of this conflict in the world? How is this conflict changing global energy and the impact of the conflicts in the Gulf nations? I know you said a lot around how that is affecting us as Nigeria, in Nigeria, but how is that also affecting the nations in the Middle East? Because that is going to eventually affect the global oil crisis. So over to you, sir, Prof. Professor
Can you
Killer.
hear me? Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you now, sir.
Excellent. You can hear me. Okay, yeah. So, well, how will it affect the world? The short answer is that the prices of oil and all materials coming from oil will go up, and the prices of other commodities are likely to go up. The long answer, which includes why, is this: the at least in the short term, this is what we should expect. The attack on Iran causes a disruption. The most visible, the most tangible form of that destruction is the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. That channel through which oil is taken out of Iran is blocked, and Iran itself, and oil is not leaving the place, which means that the supply of oil has reduced across the world, and as you know, the demand remains the same. So easily the price will go up. And it's a price that we're seeing already going up in England, in the US, and other parts of the world. I'm surprised about the US one, because after all, they have Venezuelan oil, but it turns out that that is not enough. The expected impact of an increase in the cost of oil, which let's call it energy, is that it will bring an increase to the cost of production across board. So everybody, all their machines, the light, the energy they use, the cost of producing will go up, and therefore it will now affect the cost of product and services. There is a peculiarity about the Iranian situation that makes what is bad even worse. China gets a very huge part of its oil from Iran. And because it's not getting it, the cost of production for China will go up. And as you know, China produces for a lot of the world. So if the cost of production for China goes up and the prices goes up, it will affect everybody a lot. But now we go to strategic management. The West, led by the US, what are they doing to counter this? Remember, there was a country called Russia that we've forgotten about that sits in a corner that has oil and gas. And because of, they call that one attack, because of the attack in Ukraine, they've stopped allowing them to sell to the world. Now, whilst the disruption from Iran is going on, the plan is to find a way to allow the oil of Russia to get back to the West and to the rest of the world.
Working perfectly well now.
So
it might not still work again.
Sorry?
Should
I stop?
So, Prof, you can go on now. We will mute him from here.
Okay, that's fine. So what is going on? It's a fantastic, I call it in another paper, the fluidity of notions in international relations, how concepts and principles and values can be very fluid. So all of a sudden, we're going to soon see that Russia may not be that bad anymore, and we can use their oil since we can't get the one for Iran. So Western countries from Italy are reconsidering it, that yes, maybe we should allow Russia. So to the extent, what happens is this: three things. One, supply of oil goes down, the price goes up, and for all you know, Russia might be smiling to the bank very soon. We will smile a bit. I go back to Nigeria, but we won't smile very much because what we get, what we produce is not a lot to change our situation, and the one we get is likely to go into consumption straight away. So it's not a good scenario for us overall. But it will be good for some people if they're able to mismanage it. I yield the floor.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Thank you. I know there's one question that I want to ask both of you, but I want to leave the floor open for our distinguished audience to ask questions. Anyone? Admiral Musa's connection is back now, so we'll probably also give him 7 minutes just to round up his presentation. Okay. But then, is anybody ready to ask questions, especially directly to Professor Albert and Professor Killer, in case they want to leave before the end of the program? Anyone, please, can you indicate by raising up your hand or just go ahead? Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes, we can.
All right. So I will just allow Admiral Musa to finish the presentation, and then we'll round off for the program. Thank you. Admiral, you have the floor.
Thank you, moderators. I'm very sorry about the inconvenience that may have caused me this delay. Let me just go straight to the main issue. I was going to say that I'm framing this discussion based on the spillover effect. That is quite understandable, but I'm limiting myself to the implications, which I will just go direct. First, how external conflict generates security spillover effect. Second, how such dynamic may influence radicalization and the extremist narrative in Nigeria. And then the third will be the implication for public order management and preventive security policies. The security spillover framework foresees that external geopolitical conflict may generate indirect consequences in decent society, and Nigeria inclusive, This spillover effect often occurs through some pathways. I mentioned briefly some of them that are related to us: ideological transmission, narrative mobilization, economic shock, as already highlighted, identity polarizations, protest and solidarity movements. Such dynamics interact with existing social tension, particularly if poorly managed. They may generate what we call the second order security effect. This refers to the indirect consequences that will emerge through political mobilization, information flow, and ideological influence, rather than through direct military engagement. We are aware that Nigeria's security environment is already belabored with so many challenges, which include insurgency, communal tensions, and others. So this kind of effect could have a kind of catalytic effect on the existing challenges. So what are these challenges? The first is security and radicalization dynamics of the implications. One is external conflict and local radicalization. The intensification of Middle East hostility can serve as a catalyst for ideological mobilization within distant society. In Nigeria context, geopolitical narratives surrounding Iran, Israel, and Western interventions may resonate differently across religious constituencies, potentially intensify sectarian rhetoric if not well managed. Importantly, radicalization does not require direct operational coordination from foreign actors. Narrative itself and identification alone can stimulate grievance mobilization and protest activisms. Internal extremism and strategic exploitation. Extremist exploitation such as Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa province, they often operate within a transnational ideological ecosystem that incorporates global conflicts into propaganda narrative. Such dynamics illustrate how symbolic alignment with external crises can enhance ideological legitimacy, recruitment, and fighter morals. So they can decide to reinforce their anti-Western messages. They can also frame their local insurgency as part of a broader global struggle. The whole idea is to boost their recruitment and then raise funds to strengthen the morale among their own fighters. While there is no confirmed direct operational linkages between these groups that I just mentioned, but the current crisis, symbolic alignment with global geopolitical narratives often enhance ideological legitimacy among these vulnerable populations. There is issue of public order management challenges that will follow. Public demonstrations to Middle East conflicts are not unprecedented in Nigeria. We are aware of this. Protests expressing solidarity with Palestine or Iran have historically occurred in urban centers such as Abuja, Kano, and Kaduna. Beyond mass mobilization, global crisis can also inspire isolated acts of violence in distant regions. I'm sure you are aware of an example. An explosion outside U.S. Embassy in Oslo this month, 8 March, is currently under investigation by authorities as a potential act of terrorism, possibly linked to heightened geopolitical tension in the Middle East. Although geographical distance, this incident illustrates how international conflict can inspire low actors on symbolic attack, reinforcing the importance of proactive public order management in Nigeria through vigilance and preparedness. While peaceful expression is legitimate, large gathering and emotionally charged environment may escalate if crowd management is inadequate. For instance, heavy-handedness response could escalate to violent crashes, creation of martyrdom narratives, or can even further radicalization. On the other hand, inadequate security presence may also allow infiltration by violent extremist actors seeking to exploit the situation. So there is a need for effective public order management before, and this requires intelligence-led risk assessment, There need to be pre-engagement with religious community leaders and proportionate and de-escalation focused policy. There have to be clear rules of engagement in this case. And of course, a real-time strategic communication. So recognizing these potential risks naturally leads to next question: what should Nigeria do about it? So addressing the domestic risk emanating from external geopolitical crisis require a preventive security strategy that go beyond conventional military responses. It will require a multi-layer approach grounded in a whole of society doctrine. By integrating state institutions, security agencies, civil society organizations, religious leaders, and community structure. So what should we be doing now? We should not assume that the conflict is ongoing between three countries and the country has been peaceful so far, no reactions. Mark you, these issues are not something you can predict. You can only be able to be prepared except you have a robust intelligence gathering mechanism. And then they need to be, you don't have to wait till the issue happens before you start your strategic communication. You need to counter disinformation and extreme framing so that they will not turn it to their own use before you start reacting. You need to promote narrative or national unity over important geopolitical divisions. I'm sure some of my colleagues have already mentioned the importance of preventive measures with regard to even our economy. We need to engage communities, strengthen and interfaith dialogue. This period of Lent and Ramadan provide a very veritable opportunity for that. Mosques should be sensitized, church should be sensitized that we need to disassociate ourselves from towing the line of religion with regard to the conflict that is going on in the Middle East. After all, it cannot be more religious than those who are in the process of religion, because the issue at stake, like the first speaker mentioned, is more than religion. In fact, there is no even religion attached to it. So we need to guide against this. I will not say any more thing about economic stability measure because that has been given. Because I have limited time, I'm open to questions. So let me just go straight to what I would call strategic conclusion. And I would also like to share my slide after now. Therefore, the issue before us in Nigeria should not be saying that we are not directly connected to the Middle East conflict. The real question is whether Nigeria possesses the institutional awareness and societal resilience to manage the indirect pressure such crises may generate. The US-Israel-Iran crisis does not pose a direct military threat to Nigeria. However, this second-order security implication might be significant. For Nigeria, the crisis should therefore be understood as a strategic amplifier of existing vulnerability than a new standalone threat. So Nigeria must adopt a proactive, intelligence-driven, and socially responsive approach to managing any spillover effect. Lastly, in an era of globalized information flow and transnational ideological network, national security is no longer defined solely by the defense of territorial borders. It is increasingly require safeguarding societal cohesion against the ripple effect of distant geopolitical crisis. A good example is what is happening in Iran. Of all the challenges they have been able to maintain some cohesion because of the whole essence of the populace being highly sensitized. As a leading state in West Africa and the responsible actors in regional security, Nigeria must strengthen its domestic resilience. And I want to emphasize that domestic resilience, so that external geopolitical shock do not undermine its capacity to contribute to stability and development within the broader sub-regions. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Admiral. We are happy that you were able to complete the presentation. This is the amount of information we'll have missed without your presentation. So thank you very much. I'm really conscious of time. I know we're supposed to stop by 12, but I still want to give opportunity for anyone on the platform that would like to give comments, answer, ask questions to our resource persons. Please, the floor is open. Mr. Mustafa Mohammed. Danjuma. Madam Mercy.
Good afternoon,
How yes, just comments, questions, so we can round up.
Yeah, this is Mr. Mustafa once again. Thank you very much for the time. I would like to appreciate the professor's highlights on the entire process of this interopen relationship of issues. I only want to comment on his efforts towards solving this, enlightening us on this session, please. I thank him once again for being there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. In general, Professor Albert have advised that probably the only multilateral international organization that can weigh into this conflict and stop is the United Nations. From that note, it means, and Admiral, you also mentioned strengthening ECOWAS and the African Union. So this is more like a multilateral effort to want to strengthen our local capacity and also so our local capacity not to get entangled, with the kind of conflicts that is happening with Professor Killer's suggestion that in a way is also why we need to transit from just the oil economy into having other means of wealth creation and support so that we don't depend on international economy that can be stopped by war, such as oil. I really want to thank everyone that have contributed to this. I don't know if there's any last word from our resource persons before we close the program.
Well, personally, I thank you for putting this meeting together. And I also want to commend the other resource persons. I benefited from their contributions. So that means as I made my own small contribution, I also benefit from what the other resource person said. So this engagement has been of mutual benefit to all. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Albert. Appreciate it. Any other concluding statement from our resource person, Professor Killer, Admiral Musa? Professor Killer.
Hello?
Okay, Admiral Musa, yes, just any concluding statement, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just want to reemphasize a point. I thought I did, but it's just to emphasize. This program is very timely because when I posted it to some of my friends, say, oh, it's like it's overtaken by event. No, this is one thing that we must guide against. Where crisis is going on, that it has not ripple effect to us, does not, in terms of maybe security now, does not mean that we should go and sleep. Proactiveness is what we need to build resilience. So we really need to encourage our practitioners that nothing is over until it's over. Even when it's over, there are after effects. That's what I want to emphasize. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Admiral. I know
Thank
Prof.
you very much.
Yes, Prof.
Well, just to say thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your time. I hope like Prof, we've all learned something. and we keep on learning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir. I think from our part, what we need to do, we will definitely have a part 2 of this because we know this crisis is not going to end soon. We will just make sure all our platform, we sensitize people to attend this program. I know one of the challenges because we changed the date, but before the end of the month, we will have this kind of engagement again, so we can have contribution from stakeholders. I'm thinking there is one question. Okay, so one of the participants is just appreciating everyone. Mercy Leckworth. Thank you. On behalf of the Peace Building Development Foundation, I really want to appreciate everyone. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your contribution. And we hope to see you next time. Once we are done with this report, we will also put everything, the ones that can be shared to the platform. Have a good day and bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye too.
Okay. We'll just follow up, flopped.